sessions like at the moment?
Tough, as you would expect, Rob. Yeah, excited. The competitors, they want to do their bit. You know, they see everybody else doing their bit. There's been an enormous amount of work gone on through staff, medical staff, doctors, other people at the football club to provide a safe environment. You know, and enormous amount of credit should go to those guys to get our football club back up and running and taking those small steps that everybody else is doing. Even the fellas next door to me that started building at 7:30 in the morning this morning. So we all want to go work. And my players, to a man, they've been led brilliantly by the skipper. Have all shown that same desire to get back to work. So possibly didn't enjoy the running aspect of it, of training yesterday when they were doing a 2,000 metre run. Didn't enjoy that bit, but you know, they've worked hard to get into this position as professional footballers. They've certainly worked double hard to get into the Premier League in the position that they're in, and they, like everybody else, wants to get back playing and get back training and doing their bit.
Does it feel real now that essentially football is on the path to coming back?
Yeah, it does. I obviously watched the Bundesliga over the weekend, and you saw those figures that were put out. There's enormous enthusiasm in this in this country regarding our game, and I should imagine you ask anybody, the man in the street, anybody that loves and follows it, whether they're involved in it from a playing and coaching point of view, from an administration point of view, from a media point of view, and most importantly from a supporting point of view. We've all missed it, and I'm really looking forward to getting back and playing. It's going to be different. Obviously, looking at the Bundesliga over the weekend, it was a little bit eerie. The pace and the tempo of the games wasn't as possibly it would be in front of 40,000-50,000 people, but I think it'll get better, it'll get quicker, and like every start to a season, because really it is, this is what we're doing, we're starting a mini season. You know, players will pick it up pretty quickly, and we're confident that our players at Sheffield United will do that.
What are some of the challenges of working under the protocols that everybody in the Premier League is having to work to?
Well, the challenges from our point of view is that we've not got the infrastructure and facilities of the majority of Premier League clubs. So, but we have to adapt and work it out. You know, myself as a football manager, right away through my early coaching career, you have to adapt off the pitch just as much as on it, and different challenges that you have to overcome, and this has certainly been a huge challenge to everybody at the football club, and not just me, not just Al organising, us organising stuff, the doctors that have been involved in the process, and they've worked magnificently to get the football club up and running, because as we all know, it's the football club, and I think Steve Bettis touched on it in his media work early on in the week, is not just about what happens on a Saturday afternoon. It's what the football club's about, the 600 or 700 people that it employs, the effect it has on our great city, the effect it has on the supporters, and as I said, everybody. Even the most ardent of Sheffield Wednesday fans that are sometimes delivering these boxes to my door, which has become more and more frequent over this lockdown period, are asking when you're back playing and when you're returning to training, and that has just been a consistent question from everybody I bump into. Chris, what's happening? What's happening? When the boys back training? When are we back playing? And that is from the man in the street. It's from everybody that I'm in contact with, and I think that's a massive message on terms of where we're at, how much we've missed it, and obviously when it's safe to do so. But been in on a few of these calls, knowing the work that our football club's done, Rob, being involved with the Premier League experts, and I keep saying this, they're the experts. They won't lead us down a path of danger, and one that if they thought it was going to end up in a way that we all wouldn't want it to end up. And we're taking our lead off them when it's safe to do so. But we feel that everybody feels in the game this is the right time, and as I said, my players have shown an enormous enthusiasm to get back working and competing.
How often are the players and the staff being tested at the moment?
Yeah, twice a week. We went through the process on Friday. There's obviously Premier League protocol, confidentiality, and data protection on terms of talking about how the tests have gone, and I'll fall into line with that. Obviously there's been a couple of cases that have been detected over the weekend, over 750 tests on over the weekend, and a couple of staff. I know Ian Wone has been detected with it, and one player. So I think they're encouraging numbers from our point of view. I'm not surprised about the numbers because of how healthy the players are and what lengths they've gone to making sure that they do their bit and are responsible and disciplined in their approach to the awful virus that's affected the nation. So we're looking at twice a week, Rob. Our next test is on Friday, and we'll be tested twice a week, and that is up and beyond, above anything any other profession in the country. So I think that shows you what lengths the Premier League are prepared to go to get the football back up and running. And obviously the question that everybody's asked, has it got government backing? Yeah. Has it got NHS backing? Yeah. So from a morally and social point of view, everybody seems happy with the situation.
Troy Deeney has said that he won't return to train at Watford. Have any of your players expressed any similar concerns? And if a player did come to you and say, I have some reservations, how would you approach that? So
I know there's been talking about communication lines. It's a huge responsibility from myself and the staff to talk to the players, for me to talk to the skipper, and the skipper to pass those messages on, and being involved in the process. Of course, they are human beings. They are opinionated. They've got their own points of view, as Troy has, as everybody has. They have an opportunity to speak to myself. I think I've got that open relationship with them. They have the opportunity of going through the skipper. Everybody's on the same page at Sheffield United. They all want to go back to work. I understand and respect any player's point of view, and they have that decision to make, and I'll respect that. I respect that as from a decision point of view, and I respect that from a financial point of view. People are talking about not paying wages if they don't play. That's the contracted footballers, and as I keep saying, morally from my point of view, the human beings, and if they make that decision, then I will fully respect that 100%. But nobody's been had a gun to their head. Nobody's been forced into anything they don't want to do. They've all made a decision individually, and as far as I'm concerned, that is the right one and the positive one to make from their point of view. And as I said, if Troy or anybody else has their own situations that are different to everybody else, I think it's only right that we respect that.
Have you got a view on when football could potentially return? I think June the 12th was the original target. Presumably that could be revised if needed. But you will have an idea of when your players would be ready if it was safe to return.
tomorrow afternoon. They want to compete now. The competitors, Rob, they've got to. To be a professional footballer, you've got to do a lot of things right to have a career in the game, to get to the Premier League, to get in the position. They've not. As I've just done another interview, they've not taken themselves off anywhere else. They can't do anyway. They've not had the red stuck in a fridge. They've come back in magnificent shape. They've had a responsibility to their profession. To keep themselves in good nick. It's a different scenario. People keep talking about, the length of time. They've not been to wherever they go now, Dubai or Vegas or wherever they go, and in these beach clubs and beach parties or whatever, and drinking whatever they want and eating whatever they want. They've kept themselves in brilliant nick. They knew that season was paused, and that's what it was. It wasn't postponed. It wasn't finished. Before the Newcastle game, it was paused, and they've kept themselves in brilliant nick. We did testing yesterday. We're delighted with everybody's come through. Everybody's fit and healthy. I've got a viewpoint on it. Majority of players in the Premier League are internationals now. The Euro Championship finishes on July the 12th, I think is right. I think quite a few of those players that are playing in the Premier League would like to be involved in the final, and the next season starts on the 8th of August. Where maths wise and dates wise, that isn't an awful lot of time. I do think the players are given enough time, but the date that was first set out to us as possibly a potential one, as far as I'm concerned, my players are ready to go. Will the tempo be as good or as quick as what it was when we left off? No. But is it at the start of season? No. And it always takes 1-2 games to get themselves into a rhythm. But when players are talking about going on international tours and playing in major tournaments and then coming back and having a couple of weeks rest and a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks pre-season, and they're back playing. They're back playing. They're playing 2 or 3 games, which will obviously be the case from our point of view. We'll have 2 or 3 games behind closed doors, games amongst ourselves. It isn't going to be the same, but as I've said before, and you've talked about it, we have to adapt and we have to compromise our situation because it's unprecedented times. But the bigger picture is for us to get back working like everybody else is doing. And if everybody else can do it, certainly we can do it. And as far as I'm concerned, my players are ready to go when asked to, kept themselves, as I keep saying, in brilliant condition. And the competitors, they want to go back to the contact aspect of it. The individual training is good, and it would be the same in a pre-season. But the way the players are now, the athletes, the distances they cover, the intensity that they run, they know as much as anybody that to keep themselves in peak physical condition is absolutely key to this. They've done that. They've shown an incredible amount of professionalism and discipline, and they're ready to go when the Premier League tell us it's ready to go. And I think that's my thing all along, Rob, is that I'm not an expert from the medical aspect of it. I'll have my views on it. My players aren't experts. They'll have the views on it, but we're guided. We have to have an opinion, and looking at my players are ready to go when that first date comes. If it's another week, it's another week, and we'll deal with that.
Finally, from me, have you had any confirmation from Manchester United that Dean Henderson will be able to finish the season with you?
No, we're all from a contractual point of view now. We're all looking to extend. The players that we've got at Sheffield United that are on loan. Panos and Mo Besic, Panos Retsos, Mo Besic, and 2 or 3 others that we've got on loan. We're looking to extend those contracts. There's obviously a couple of contracts that will expire. That we're looking to extend those contracts, and from Manchester United's point of view, we're coming into that time where they'll make decisions in terms of extending or not extending. I'm very confident that Manchester United will let Dean stay with us to the end of the season. I don't think it's worth asking what Dean wants to do because I think the answer. and vice versa. You know, if it was roles reversed, I wouldn't think it would be an issue. But I think I've got to respect that Dean is Manchester United's player, and we have to respect whatever decision they make. But if he goes back, he can't play, and I'm sure that Dean wants to finish off an outstanding season that he's already had playing for Sheffield United.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers, Rob.
Hi, Chris. Hope you're well, mate.
Hi, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Watford came out yesterday and released a statement saying 3 players had tested positive. Can you? I mean, you mentioned confidentiality. 3 members of staff and 1 player. Could you tell us if your staff or any of your tests came back positive?
No, because there's a confidentiality agreement in that. So, you know, we're following protocol and data protection. I think you know the answer, Chris. You know, if it did, I should imagine we would. But from our point of view, we're sticking with the protocol that the Premier League have set out and right the way through it. You know, in terms of guidelines, in terms of when we return to training, you won't believe the amount of detail that's gone in to by the Premier League, by the Premier League doctors, by the advisors, by the football, them rolling into the football clubs, to the medical staff, to the physios, to the conditioners, to the people generally around the football club. You know, parking, where to park, the flow of everything. So we minimise that contact 100%, and we're disciplined in our approach. But as far as the testing is, we're falling in line with, as we said, the data protection and the medical confidentiality that is being set out by the Premier League.
It seems as a workplace that a football training ground is probably, with everything being in place now, it seems one of the safest places to be now. Is that fair to say?
If not the safest, yeah. If not the safest, and that's what we've been told, and that's what we're trying to set up in terms of the testing, in terms of you know, the individual responsibility. Nobody can break the chain because we all want it to work, because everybody else is working just as hard as well. You know, the Premier League doctors, everybody involved, the government advisors that are on the case in terms of getting Premier League football back, because as well of the impact that it will have, and as well, I'm not shy away from it from the financial point of view as well, what it would impact if we didn't restart this season, what effect it does have on every aspect of football. And as I've always said, I've got a unique insight of it because I've worked at every level, and now I know that what happens at Premier League doesn't just stay with the Premier League; it affects everybody down the pyramid, and this is the reason that everybody wants to get it back. This is the reason that we go through all the protocols, and the players are so disciplined not to put anybody at risk. And if there is somebody that does get the disease or contracts the disease, then obviously, you know, 7-day, 14-day quarantine, and, you know, potentially 4 weeks out as well. So I know the players are really, you know, tuning into the messages that they've been given by our staff and everybody connected in making sure that this goes as smoothly as possible.
Gary Monk told us yesterday that he's been on managers' calls with other managers in the Championship. Have you had a similar one with Premier League managers? Yeah,
we have. Yeah, we had one last week, and I've got to say the reports that came out talking about splits and divisions, I think that there's always going to be questions asked, because I think that even though there might be a perception of us of just being, you know, basically football driven and orientated and just focused on that, we have got questions to ask the Premier League and the Premier League doctors. And I keep saying experts. You know, the majority of managers are so-called experts in their field, and we're relying and listening to experts. And the call that we had was brilliant from my point of view. The information that I received And I've got to say, from the media point of view, that it came out that it was split. That's not the feeling that I had. And my call to the LMA the day afterwards, and the LMA were on the call as well, was not the feeling that they had. There might be a couple of people that have got fears and questions to be answered, and reservations, like we've talked about, Troy Deeney or any individual player might have. There might be a couple of managers who might ask him the same question, but for me, the same attitude is one of getting it back, getting back to work, and getting back playing.
Is it inevitable with the amount of money that's involved in the Premier League that there's going to be different agendas? People are going to want different things to happen with this season going forward.
Yeah, I think there is, and unfortunately, that's just a way of life. That people will look after their own football clubs, and that's their decisions to do that. I don't think I'm being controversial. I think I'm being honest and realistic. So yeah, understandable. And it has come out, isn't it? It has come out that there's different views. There's different views from Liverpool to different views from Manchester City to Sheffield United to other football clubs. And I just think that's an inevitable situation scenario. I think that we're all on the same page. That in terms of when it is safe to do so, and health is a priority. But I think the CEOs that have come out have said exactly the same thing, and I think you're always gonna get that.
Finally, from me, Chris, I mean, it's interesting, or it's funny, isn't it? I don't know if you got an opinion on this. How the government a few weeks ago was saying that footballers should be dedicating some of their money to help out others during this crisis, but then they're saying they want football back on the telly to improve the nation's mood. It's funny how it changes in a few weeks, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've all made statements and comments that possibly in time you look back and thought, why did I do that? And you all try to be measured in your approach, but it's obviously a very emotive subject when the pandemic, when the virus hits your country as hard as it has done. But I think that, as I've always said, players have got a heart. Players understand the situation. The majority of them are working class. I should imagine the majority of them do know people that have been infected and suffered, do know people that are working on the front line and have got an enormous amount of sympathy. But we have to, as I've always said, we have to come together. And I certainly thought that, the attitude towards the players at the start of all this was a little bit distasteful. But as it's come around, they've done their bit, and they always will do. As we've always said, a lot of work's done by the players of both Sheffield clubs in this city of ours that is not over spread over the media, and even in the county, right the way through, and how much football is part of Yorkshire is just as much as it's part of Sheffield, and the players and what they do, and the football clubs what they do behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, an awful lot of opinions flying about, an awful lot of speculation. But thankfully, for me, there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. We can all get back to normality in terms of working, and obviously, our work is getting back to training and getting back playing football. And as you've seen, with the viewing figures of the Bundesliga, we watch quite a lot of the Bundesliga, the German leagues. I think it's a really interesting division. Some great players, some great teams, some great tactics, and an enormous enthusiasm by everybody in this country to watch football. So I think that's a great gauge to what the Premier League will be like when hopefully we get the season back up and running.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks, mate.
Hi, Chris. Hope you're well. Quickly then, just to follow on from that, you're in phase one. Premier League clubs are in phase one now of their return. What does phase two look like, and how long might phase one last?
Well, they're obviously trying to get through phase one as quick as possible. I think they talked it as a minimum 7 days, and if everything goes to plan, they will assess it. I think it's just an ongoing scenario. It's rolling on from day to day. It has the ability to pause. It has the ability to change, and with obviously certain situations that might happen. But they want to roll it out as quick as possible and as safe as possible, and keep everybody on board and on the journey. So small groups, of training now, testing next Tuesday. So Friday and Tuesday. So I should imagine that will be key as well to come through those 2 testing periods. And make a decision on that quickly, because obviously step 2 is contact and making the groups bigger, which obviously has to come as quick as possible to accelerate the small-sided games, the 11 versus 11s, and then into obviously a return to playing.
You seemed quite optimistic that Dean Henderson would be allowed to play until the end of the season. Does that optimism extend to the likes of Besic as well? Yeah,
we've asked the question to the players individually, and there's just one player that is we need to speak to. I need to speak to today, but they've shown, as you should imagine, enormous enthusiasm to come back after the season that they've had. And I'm not surprised, as I've said all along. I'd respect the decision. And if the decision is based on personal decision, on a medical decision, I respect that and totally understand that. And we'll move with the players that we've got. But as I've said all along, not surprised about the attitude of the players, not surprised in terms of the physical condition that they're out there, enthusiasm, my enthusiasm and the staff's enthusiasm to get back to work and get back into competitive football.
John Lundstrom was the player who you were talking to for a while, and there was an impasse there. Has this situation maybe allowed that to be resolved at all, or is that still a big issue?
I said that during, I think, the last interview that we did, that I think that the situation that we were all in at the time, and I think it must have been about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I didn't think it was the right time to really be discussing with agents and players and approaching players about their contractual situation. Obviously, behind the scenes, there's been work done on so many fronts, from contact between myself and Steve and the board. And Carl Sheba. So, we're always looking at it. Hopefully now the boys are back into full-time training, we can accelerate those conversations with John and a couple of others to resolve those situations. And I'm sure the vibe I'm getting off the players, that they're just as keen as we are as a football club to complete those contract talks and players to commit their future to Sheffield United, and why not, from the season that we're having, from where we've gone, from their contribution as well. As I've said, it's always a reward for the contribution and performances that they've produced, and we want to keep that core group together. He's done fantastic well in his first season. I keep saying to it, they've climbed a mountain to get into the Premier League and to get into that position. Now the hard work really does crank up and ramp up, and those boys, with their attitude, the way they've improved, the way they've stepped up to the challenge of Premier League football, and I'm sure there's much more to come in a red and white shirt.